rise and shine. So talks money, the future's a land. Grab your coffee, let's take a ride. It's wealth and wisdom, time will rise. Author, Mr. Educator, team sharing the wealth, building things you should know. From trust to banking, it's all you must. Your guide to what is learning to trust. Legacy matters, secure it right. Dreams take shape with every insight. Rules and assets, life insurance plans, building for your future with expert hands. So talks money and more, building wealth with knowledge galore. Asset protection plans to grow, to live and watch your dreams overflow. From saving today to trust for life, breaking generational wealth divides. Healthcare directives, banking tips, we're here to help your fortune eclipse. From saving today to trust for life, breaking generational wealth divides. Healthcare directives, banking tips, we're here to help your fortune eclipse. So tune in now, it's time to learn. So wisdom's your return. Invest, protect, and thrive for sure. Signing off is all talks money and more.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to another edition of Soul Talks Money and More, where we are always educating, enlightening, informing, and empowering our community. I am your host, Dr. Sabrina Edmon Williams, educator, author, and investor, opening minds and closing contracts. I am so noted. And this morning, I want to talk about something that has been weighing heavily on my heart this week. But before we get started, I need you to do something for me. Go ahead, call a friend, text your cousin, wake somebody up and tell them Dr. Williams is on the radio. And this is a conversation they don't want to miss. Do I need to wait on anybody? Come on now. Come on. Get up, get up, get up. It is time to rise and shine. Rise and shine. What has you all upset this week, Dr. Williams? Well, I'm glad you asked, because once again, Mississippi is in the national spotlight for all the wrong reasons. All the wrong reasons. Now, in case you don't know what I'm talking about, you obviously have not watched the news this week. You hadn't had your television on, or you have not been on social media this past week. But before I get started, as I say, I need you to go ahead, call somebody, text somebody. I need Mississippians to be a part of this conversation this morning, because I got some things to put on our mind. But allow me to start the show off by offering up this disclaimer right now before folks start running in my comments, sending me all kind of nice, nasty, messages, or start ringing this phone here at the studio. What I'm not here to do this morning is discuss who was right or wrong in this situation that we're getting ready to talk about. Social media has done a very good job of already handling that. That is not why I am here this morning. Now, personally, if you ask me, because y'all know how I do it, I'm going to tell you what God placed on my heart to tell you. There is enough blame, if you will, to be shared by all parties involved. But we're going to leave that alone, because that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today's conversation is not getting ready to be an investigation. I'm not the investigator. I'm not the judge or the jury. I simply want to offer a different perspective for our conversation and our consideration. How about that? Now, many Mississippians are outraged about the outcome of a case that was initiated, as I understand it, by some missing Pampers, okay? But my question for us Mississippians this morning is this: where was the outrage when millions went missing? Where was that outrage? I've been on social media and I've seen people's share their perspectives about this case that we're getting ready to talk about. And I've seen a lot of people say, well, she shouldn't have been stealing. And that's what happens when you take your baby to commit a crime. And, this is theft. And people are just thieves and they're taking and they're taking. But I want you to think about something. Millions have gone missing here in Mississippi. And I hadn't seen one protest, not one. Where is that same outrage over these missing millions that people seem to have about these missing Pampers? Think about that. A young mother is accused of shoplifting baby items, allegedly. A police encounter follows. A 1-year-old child loses his life. The entire state, not really just the state, the nation is talking about these Pampers, this case about these Pampers. But for years, Mississippi has been at the center of one of the biggest welfare scandals in America involving money, get this, intended for poor families and needy children. In fact, federal officials determined that the state of Mississippi should repay nearly $101 million in misspent welfare funds. And now we have allegations involving approximately $95 million at a local credit union. So this morning, my question is simple. Why, Ms. Armstrong, are we angrier about missing Pampers than missing millions? I need to ask that question again because somebody just getting up this morning and they're just joining the conversation. My question is simple. Why are we angrier about missing Pampers than missing millions? Mississippi has spent the past week in an uproar over the headlines about missing Pampers, while somehow we seem to overlook the headline last week about the missing millions. How do we do that? Now, before we get into this discussion about money, because after all, this show is entitled So Talks Money and More. But before we get into this discussion about money, let's discuss life 101, okay? A 1-year-old child named Cohen Wiley should still be here today. Reports actually indicate that I'm just going to break this down for those that may not be familiar with this case out of Senatobia, Mississippi, which is north of here, just about 30 miles, as I understand it, or 30 minutes south of Memphis. Now, this 1-year-old child, Cohen Wiley, lost his life this past week. And reports indicated that officers actually responded to allegations of shoplifting, a call that involved some missing diapers or Pampers and baby items at Walmart in, again, Senatobia, Mississippi. Now, during this encounter, an officer actually fired into a vehicle, as I understand it, that was fleeing, and the child was subsequently hit and lost his life in this incident. Now, one thing we know for sure, the details of what happened are up for interpretation because we have not, to my knowledge, seen the video either from Walmart or the police body cam or any of those things that would put our minds to rest and answer all these questions about what exactly happened. But one thing we do know is the outcome. This baby is no longer of this world. So let's just stop right here, because regardless of how anybody feels about shoplifting, again, let's be clear on something. We know this child lost his life. And as a state, we got to wrestle with that reality. That is the real this morning. And here's another real for us. No package of Pampers has ever been worth a child's life. Ever been worth a child's life. So let's just say we're going to agree on that. There's something we can all agree on. But now, let's ask ourselves a harder question. Because you know Dr. Williams doesn't do anything easy. We got to do this hard. We got to really peel back this onion this morning and ask ourselves some questions. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, some of y'all going to be uncomfortable this morning. And you know I like us to be in a place of uncomfortable, because hopefully uncomfortable will spur us to action. So let's think about some things. Let's ask this harder question. Why would a mother allegedly need to steal baby supplies in the first place? Why? Now, before somebody says personal responsibility, okay, we're not here to debate or discuss that. Let me just remind you, America already has programs designed to help struggling families. Mississippi receives millions of dollars intended to assist poor and needy families. TANF. Does that sound familiar to anybody? That acronym? TANF, TANF, stands for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. Let me say that again. TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. Those three words matter, for needy families, because those funds were created specifically for families facing hardship, families struggling with children, families struggling with food, families struggling with housing, families struggling with survival, families struggling to afford Pampers. And yet, Mississippi became the center of a welfare scandal involving tens of millions of dollars that federal officials later determined had been, quote unquote, misspent. They weren't shoplifted. They weren't stolen. There was no theft involved, right? They were simply misspent. I'm going to let that sink in. I got a lot to say about that, but we're going to move on for right now. So let me ask you this question. If the money intended to help poor families had actually reached poor families, would this young mother have been in this desperate situation at all? I'm going to ask that question again. If the money intended to help poor families had actually reached poor families, would this young lady have been in this desperate situation at all? Well, I guess we'll never know. But what we do know is this: stealing Pampers because of need is not the same as stealing millions because of greed. There it is, I said it. Stealing Pampers because of need, it is not the same as stealing millions because of your greed. Can we have an honest conversation, Mr. Armstrong? Do we have to just sugarcoat this thing? Can I go ahead and just be honest about some things this morning, if you will allow me to? Now, many people listening to me right now have probably already judged that young mother. You know, as I said, I looked at some of those comments on social media and oh my gosh, what I saw, you know, we crucified that young mother. She used that baby as a human shield. You know, she knew what she was doing. She shouldn't have taken that baby in there to steal those Pampers. She did this. She was irresponsible. She did, you know, she. Some have called her irresponsible. Some have called her reckless. Some have said she should have simply paid for the items. She's saying, according to what I've read, that she has a receipt. Again, I don't know. And I'm not here to debate any of that this morning. That is not what this conversation is about. We're here to elevate the conversation because we have some much bigger issues, some much bigger fish to fry this morning, Mississippi. Come on. I do have a question. You know, a lot of people are upset. In fact, I saw several protests outside of that Walmart in Senatobia. I understand they've shut the place down a couple of times, and, you know, several people coming from across the state, from other states to protest Walmart. And I get it, I guess, but I really don't get it, you know. Walmart, I guess people feel like Walmart started this whole thing because they called the law enforcement officers in the first place. And so maybe that's why we're angry at Walmart. Now, I can tell you some whole other reasons why we probably should be angry at Walmart, but we're not here to discuss that this morning either. My point is, where is that same energy about these millions that have gone missing in the state of Mississippi? Where's that same energy? I don't recall none of us, and I say of us, I don't recall none of us protesting at the Capitol when we found out, 3-4 years ago, 5 6 now maybe, that those millions went missing. But I saw folks protesting outside Walmart. Where was that same energy? Why is our outrage louder when this case involving Pampers than it is for millions being fleeced in front of our very eyes? Why do we scrutinize poverty while excusing greed? Because that's what it's all about, you guys. Why are we quicker to condemn struggle than excess? I want you to think about that. We have become a society that often judges survival more harshly than we do greed. There is what is a justifiable reason why a person would steal $77 million or $95 million other than greed? I don't understand that. And as my brother that so clearly sits in this seat in the afternoon says, make it make sense, because it ain't making sense to me this morning. But yet again, we've become a society that will judge a young mother for stealing Pampers and baby items, whatever it was she took out of Walmart or didn't take or was accused of taking. I don't know. I wasn't there. But our mouths go on mom when it comes to the millions of dollars that folks take. What we may not understand, what we may fail to realize is that's our money. That's taxpayers' money. That's your money. But our mouths are on mom when it comes to that. We criminalize poverty. We rationalize power. We scrutinize struggle. We excuse influence. Now let's tell the truth, because we're being honest this morning. When a poor person takes something worth $20, society immediately asks, what's wrong with them? What's wrong with them? She should have just paid for it. What was wrong with her? Why she had to go in the store stealing? But when millions disappear, society turns around and asks, well, what happened? Notice the difference. One question assumes guilt. The other is looking for an explanation. When the poor are accused, we ask who to punish. Everybody is looking to place blame. Go on Facebook, go on social media and look in those comments. The mother is at fault. The driver is at fault. The police officer is at fault. Walmart is at fault. Everybody is at fault because we need somebody to punish. We need somebody to hold accountable for the loss of that 1-year-old life. And I get that. I get it. I'm not saying that there should not be some accountability. But what I am saying is there is enough accountability to go around, not just on the young mother. We ask who to punish when it comes to poor people that are accused of committing crimes. But now when the powerful are accused, we ask who to protect. Who are we going to protect? How can we protect these folks? Now, let's go ahead and move forward. Let's fast forward. Because as I say, some of us got caught up in that headline about what happened in Senatobia. But now if we had turned the pages of the newspaper just a little bit more, we would have seen that there was a whole nother story that was unfolding right here in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi, to be exact. Mississippi spent years discussing welfare funds intended for poor families. We talked about that $77 million, and actually, you guys, I don't even know where we are on that. Does anybody know? Anybody on Facebook that's watching me now or on YouTube, where are we on that? Did the people pay the money back? I understand some of those involved made some payments, but we're talking $77 million. And I would venture to say, I'll go on record as saying that's probably where we stop counting. We probably don't know and never will know the exact amount that was misspent. We'll put it like that, because some people don't steal, they don't shoplift, they misspend things. And even after a $77 million scandal, now we're discussing allegations involving approximately $95 million connected to a local credit union. Did anybody see that other than me? Was I the only person that read that article? According to court filings and news reports, the CEO of a local credit union, Jackson Area Federal Credit Union to be exact, has been accused, and I'll say it like that, of allegedly misspending some credit union funds to the tune of $95 million. Now, this $95 million, Mr. Armstrong, as I understand it, was not used to buy Pampers or other essential items. But what it was used for was to finance luxury purchases, including multiple properties, luxury vehicles, a beachfront condominium, designer handbags, jewelry, and expensive furnishings. The allegations remain the subject of civil litigation. Now, that's the one that got me right there, because as I read and I kept reading the article, what I did not see was anything about any criminal, anything criminal associated with this. Civil simply means I'm suing you because you took my stuff. But now criminal means it's a crime what you did. Did I get that wrong? Come on, talk to me, Facebook. Talk to me, YouTube. I don't understand that. How do you shoplift a pack of $10 Pampers, and that's a crime, but you misspend $95 million, and we talking about some civil litigation? Let's compare. One story involves Pampers. The other involves luxury items. One involves alleged survival. The other involves alleged excess. One ends in the loss of life of a child, a 1-year-old child. The other generates lawsuits, court proceedings, and investigations. That contrast right there should make everybody listening to me this morning, or that will view this video at some other time, a little uncomfortable. And it should make all of us ask, what in the world is going on? And that's why I asked the question, where is the outrage? Where's the outrage about these missing millions? Where's the outrage? Now, I'm not personally a member of the Jackson Area Federal Credit Union, but my question to those of you who are is this. Well, y'all ain't down there protesting. The folks up there protesting Walmart, that's your money that was misspent on luxury items, not survival, luxury items. And I can't even necessarily justify it if it was survival. Who needs $95 million to survive? Okay, let me stop. A poor mother is accused of taking what her baby needs. A highly compensated executive is accused of taking what nobody needs. Yet, only one of those stories seem to be what we're talking about this morning. The last week, we focused a whole lot on. And only one of those stories ended with a funeral. Let me I'm looking at the clock. I think this is probably a good time to go ahead and do our station break. I need you to stay with me because we got some more stuff to peel back, you guys. I think we got some misplaced outrage this morning, and we got some people that are not asking the right questions, not looking in the right direction. We got to do some things differently. So I need you to stay with me. I'm going to throw it over here to Mr. Armstrong for this mid-show break. And then come on back on the other side. This is a good time to pick up your phone and call somebody, because some of them folks that you know, just like some of the folks that I know, are not having this conversation. We over there in the comments talking about that mother and those Pampers that's missing. But we're not talking about all these millions and millions and millions of dollars that continuously go missing. So I don't want you to go missing. I'll see you on the other side of this break.
26. It's time to take back our power, protect our right, and fight for our future. It's time to demand progress. Please join us Tuesday, July the 14th from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Those in District 2 of Hinds County, please come out and vote, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. We will make a plan to vote in 2026, take back all that we need in regards to voting. Pledge to vote in 2026. It's time to take back our power, protect our right, and fight for our future. We invite you to come out and vote Tuesday, July the 14th, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And time to demand progress. Please join us Tuesday, July the 14th.
This public service announcement sponsored by your friends here at WMPR 90.1.
All right. Now, if you're just tuning in, welcome to Soul Talks Money and More. If you were here on the front end, you know Dr. Williams has some things on her mind this morning, and we are trying to educate, enlighten, inform, and empower our community, because we are walking in the darkness right now, and it's time to come on to the light about some things. Now, as I mentioned on the front end of this conversation, The state of Mississippi is in the national spotlight for all the wrong reasons. You know, we had a situation in Senatobia, Mississippi last week that ended in the loss of life of a 1-year-old. And a lot of people are very concerned about that, as we should be. I'm not suggesting that we should not be concerned whenever there is a loss of life. But I'm also challenging us to think about the very systems that create a need for poor people, needy people, to even be in a position to have to resort to trying to take the things necessary to meet their basic needs. Now, all of this has been alleged. Again, I will say this. I don't know. We have not seen any footage, as I understand it, unless it was released this morning or sometime late yesterday afternoon. We have not seen any footage from Walmart, nor have we seen the body cam from the officer involved in the incident in Senatobia, Mississippi. But what we do know is we have some problems here in this state when it comes to people having access to resources, money, and them misspending. Let's just say misspending these resources. But what I want to know, who is watching? Who is supposed to be watching? Because as I understand it, whenever you have that kind of money, whether it's federal resources, state resources, or credit union resources, somebody should be watching those resources to make sure that they are accounted for. So whether that is your board, whether that is your legislators, somebody should be watching. So let's talk about accountability. Now, in the welfare scandal, my question is, where were the safeguards? Where were the checks? Where were the questions? Where was it? And as I understand it, because I had a conversation this weekend with one of our state representatives, nothing has been put in place since that scandal to prevent it from happening again. Absolutely nothing. So it's time to pick up your phone and start calling your representatives and asking the question, what would prevent someone else from coming in and misspending $77 million? But I tell you what the state legislatures have done. They have passed Senate Bill 2338, which extends the statute of limitation for felonious assistance program fraud, Section 97-19-71, from 5 years to 10 years, meaning prosecution must now begin within 10 years of the offense. So let me break that down. Let me put that in layman's terms. You go still as a recipient of these TANF funds, you go misspend some of them, because that's what we do with these funds. We misspend them. Well, you go misspend some and see what happens to you. Felonious assistance program fraud. Felonious. That means you become a felon when you misspend, when you misrepresent. Okay, but the very people that go in and misspend millions, some of these people were never even prosecuted. They're not felons. They don't walk around with the label felon on them. They don't have their voting rights taken from them when they misspend all of this money. And yet we sit here silently and say nothing. But folks can run up in the comments and talk about this young mother and these Pampers. Something is wrong, you guys. Something is wrong. Something is badly wrong. Badly wrong. Now, in the credit union case, again, where were the controls? Where were the auditors? This didn't just happen overnight. This was happening for years. Where was the board? The credit union has a board. Ask me how I know. Ask me how I know, because my mother was one of the first Black members, or maybe the first Black member to serve on the Mississippi League of Credit Union boards. So they have boards, but where was that board? Where was the oversight? And where are the members of the Jackson Area Federal Credit Union this morning? Who's boycotting? Who's protesting at the fact that this is not a criminal case? This is a civil matter. I'm just asking. Systems fail long before scandals become public. Scandal is usually not the failure. Scandal is the evidence of the failure. Something went wrong with the system. Scandals don't begin when they're discovered. They begin when accountability disappears. They don't begin when they are discovered. They begin when accountability disappears. So my question to you, my fellow Mississippians, who are we holding accountable? We're holding that young mother accountable for those missing Pampers. We're holding her accountable. Many people have said over and over again, she shouldn't have been stealing. Just pay for your stuff. Just show them your receipt that you paid for it. Again, I don't know. You don't know. Were you there? Did you witness it? We don't know the details of that situation. But what we do know is that Mississippi has millions and millions of dollars missing that has been misspent, misappropriated, mishandled, embezzled, however you want to call it, anything but what it is, theft, stealing, taking what's not yours. And yet we sit silently by. There are no protests at the state capitol. There is nobody holding these people that ask us for our votes responsible for this missing money, because it's their role, their job, but it's oversight of this money, right? However, nobody's holding anybody accountable. No laws have been passed, but now you go misspend some of that TANF money, that little check that you get for TANF, and you become a felon. Felon assistance program fraud is what it's called. Let that sink in. Ms. Armstrong, I don't know how you feeling about this morning, but I'm questioning some things. I think we got it wrong. Maybe we're angry at the wrong thing. You know, I'm still trying to figure out this whole Walmart boycott and protest and all of, this madness at Walmart. And again, I get it, because that whole incident in Walmart initiated everything that happened. But my question to you is this. Those of you, that even dare say Walmart has no liability or no part of accountability in this incident that happened. My question is this. If you thought for a moment that someone had taken something from you, how would you respond? Would you call the police? Or would you just say, oh, it's okay? I don't know. That's a question that we have to internally ask ourselves before we judge others. Now, the flip side of that is, because y'all know I'm going to look at it from both sides. The flip side of this thing is when you have an establishment organization as large as Walmart, trust me, they do have laws, control preventions in place. In fact, I remember wasn't too many years ago that I worked for the Department of Labor, and we used to do these cases that anything that was over $100,000 in fines was considered significant enforcement activity. And there was one store in particular that received a lot of fines. I mean, they were constantly getting hit with these hundreds of thousands of dollars of cases. And I remember having a conversation with their safety manager. And, I asked him, it's like, sir, you guys keep getting hit with all these cases. Shouldn't you think about, you don't want to think about putting something else in place, doing something different? And Ms. Armstrong, do you know what that man told me? He said, ma'am, we lose more in theft than we do in these little OSHA fines. Well, no big deal to them because it was built in. They knew that they were going to lose so much in theft. Maybe we're angry at the wrong thing. Maybe we have spent so much time focusing on the alleged theft of diapers that we've forgotten to ask the more important question, which is why families need Pampers that they can't afford. Why would they need them in the first place? Maybe we've spent so much time debating individual behavior that we've ignored systemic failure. And maybe, just maybe, we are focusing on the symptom while ignoring the disease. The disease is poverty. The disease is inequity. The disease is systems that often fail the very people they were created to help. Every scandal tells us something about a system. Every tragedy tells us what happens when that system breaks. Let me say that again. Every scandal tells us something about a system. And every tragedy tells us what happens when that system breaks. And my question to you, my fellow Mississippians, this morning is, what are we going to do about it? Where is the missing outrage? I see the protests outside of Walmart. I see them. In fact, again, I think I've heard that they've actually shut the store down on a couple of occasions. Now, you have to ask how well thought out that is. What's the plan? What are we hoping to accomplish with that? Because you got local people that depend on Walmart for their employment. And when we're shutting the store down, I'm sure they don't have anything in place that says you still get compensated, you still get paid when the store is shut down due to a protest. So who are we really hurting? In many instances, we're hurting our own because we're the ones that's working at Walmart. Okay, think about that. So there's outrage there. But where is the outrage for these missing millions? Where's the outrage? Now, as I told you at the top of the hour, there's enough blame in that situation to go around. We can prosecute, persecute, and do whatever else to that young mother. And I'm sure there are a lot of things that she could have and should have probably done differently. So we're not gonna talk about her this morning. I'm gonna give her some grace this morning. But what I am going to talk about before we slide up out of here is Senate Bill 2710. I mentioned this last week as a way of ringing the alarm because there are some new laws that are going to go into effect July 1st right here in Mississippi. And Senate Bill 2710 actually involves that law where I talked about juveniles involved in some firearm-related violent offenses to be charged as adults for these crimes. But now as I'm reading through this summary of this bill, I see something that sticks out to me. says it also creates a new crime for shooting into a group of 2 or more people with enhanced penalties for locations like schools or churches, presence of minors, or involvement of gang/terror organizations. It also creates a new crime for shooting into a group of 2 or more people with enhanced penalties for locations like schools or churches, presence of minors, or involvement of gangs/terror organizations. And as I'm reading this, my mind goes back to Senatobia, Mississippi. I wasn't there, but according to reports, there were 2 or more people inside of that car that was shot into. There was a minor inside that car that was shot into. Now, again, I'm not here to debate the specifics, but what I will tell you is this. I'm pretty sure, I've never been a police officer, but I'm pretty sure of something. When the call was received about the alleged theft, missing Pampers, stolen Pampers, shoplifted Pampers, that there was a description given of who was involved in the theft. Otherwise, how would you know who to look for? Think about that. I'm sure there was a description, and I'm sure the description probably said that there was one person that had a baby and another female, and I'm sure they were described as probably Black women, maybe gave their, description of their clothing, what they had on. I'm sure that was known. I'm sure that was known. We're criminalizing it when other people do it, but the question becomes, is everybody going to be held to the same standard? I just wanted to say that and leave that right there. You guys, we've got to do some things differently. And one of the things I'm convinced that we have got to do is we've got to do our part to step up. We cannot sit on the sidelines and not be involved in civic engagement. We can no longer just sit passively by and watch things happen. And if you're okay with sitting back, especially those of you who are members of the Jackson Area Federal Credit Union, if you're okay with sitting back watching $95 million of your hard-earned money get misspent, misplaced, misallocated, mishandled, and you say nothing, you do nothing, you don't protest, then that's part of the problem. You're part of the problem. You are part of the problem, my friends. We are part of the problem. And I put me in it as well. I'm a taxpaying citizen as well. We are part of our own problem. Why are we not holding folks accountable for handling this money and mishandling this money? As I said, after talking to one of our state representatives this morning, my understanding is has absolutely been nothing put in place to prevent another $77 million scandal, welfare scandal. But yet we sit back and we prosecute young mothers for stealing a $10 pack of Pampers. July 18th, we are trying to come together as a community once again and work with our young people. There are many people who have many opinions. She shouldn't have had the baby in the first place if she couldn't afford to take care of it. This, that, and the other. Again, I'm not here to talk about that or debate that. We can't fix the problem after it's already happened. We can't do nothing about the fact that these folks have these babies after they are here. I don't know their story. Perhaps they are victims of abuse. Let's talk about that for a minute. Let's take a whole show to talk about that. I don't know how these babies are getting here in every instance. And again, I'm not the judge and the jury. That's not what we're here to talk about. But what I am here to do is to encourage our community to come together and let's start feeding into our young people. How can you do that? I'm glad you asked. July 18th, we are planning to have our second annual Each One Teach One Day. We have again partnered with Pastor Clark and Lady Clark over at We Care Church, 139 Colonial Drive, right here in the city of Jackson. We are asking you to bring the youth out. We will be having a Each One Teach One Day. We're asking you to come out. Whatever you have inside of you that you can pass on to our youth, please come do it. And if you're not willing to do that, put your mouth on mute. Stop talking about these kids and what they don't know and what they're doing. If you're not willing to help share, help educate, enlighten, inform, and empower your community, you, my friends, are part of the problem. We've got to do better. If you can't be there, then help support the event. We're giving away school supplies. Drop off some school supplies by the church. Bring us some water. It's July. It's going to be hot out there. Bring us a bag or two of ice. Help support in some way. Share the information. I have the flyer on my Facebook page. I'm happy to send you the flyer. Give me a call, 601-891-5611, 601-891-5611. But please wait till I get off air to call me. I will send you the flyer. Leave me a message. I will text you the flyer. We want our young people to come. We'll be giving free haircuts. We're feeding them. We're giving away clothes. We are doing our level best to feed back into our community. And after this show and this incident that has happened in Senatobia, if you feel so inclined, come on and bring some Pampers out there. Let's honor little Cohen Wiley. Bring some Pampers because there may be another young mother right here in the city of Jackson that needs some Pampers. Let's help her so she doesn't have to go in trying to steal anything, and we don't have to have a whole nother, case where we mad at the world, but not mad at the people that are sitting here fleecing us in front of our very eyes. So today, I challenge our community. Let's stop looking at these stories that we talked about. When we talk about missing Pampers, missing millions. Let's stop looking at that separately because they're not separate incidents. Not really. Welfare scandal, the Senatobia tragedy, the credit union allegations, all three ask the same question. Who is protecting ordinary people? Who is protecting struggling families? Who is protecting the trust of working people? And who is protecting our children? If Mississippi can find the missing Pampers, you go over to the book, to the word, Facebook that is. They tell you all about those missing Pampers and how that young mother was so wrong. We can find the missing Pampers, but we're not finding that missing money. If Mississippi can mobilize over a shoplifting call, but not over millions intended for poor families, if Mississippi can debate a mother's actions, but not demand accountability from institutions, then maybe, just maybe, the problem is bigger than any one person. Maybe the problem is the system itself. I'm going to leave that right there. A child lost his life. Millions are missing. And the most important question isn't what was stolen. The most important question is why the people who needed help never seemed to receive it. I thank you so much for tuning in this morning. This has been another edition of So Talks Money and More. I know this one was probably heavy. I don't know whether you agree with me or not. And my job is not to make you think what I think. That's not what I'm trying to do, Mississippi. But I am trying to make us start thinking. It's time for us to wake up and start thinking. So if I've done that this morning, I've done my job. Thank you for tuning in this morning. It's been my pleasure to sit here before you this morning and talk about these missing Pampers, these missing millions, and this missing outrage. Until next time, we out of here. Peace.